Hey everyone, I hope you guys are all doing well. Welcome back to another video. For this week, I'll be sharing with you guys my pantry organization. I've been uploading a few organization videos, so I think we can call this almost like a little series that we've developed here on Simple Living. I hope you guys really enjoy these, and let's get straight into it. Alright, so to begin, this is what our pantry looked like before I started. As you can tell, it's not too messy, but it's just really overly crowded, and I just really wanted to have a nice orderly system in place so that, it could be a lot more efficient and looked a lot more appealing. So to start off, I began by removing all the items that we had in our pantry and simply placing those aside on the bench. I did work shelf by shelf, so I started off with this shelf that had all our jars, all our bulk kind of food items, and I placed those and categorized them on a bench accordingly. So once everything was laid out, I made an effort to go through every single thing and chuck out any items that we no longer needed. So this is the whole process of decluttering any things that are no longer of use or are getting old. So that was things like rubbish, any old plastic containers. So then after that, once that was done, I went through all the items that we had and just created a short list of things that we required to fill up the jars, anything that was empty, just to restock those. Once I had done that, I went ahead and gave the jars a wash. So I placed them in our dishwasher, lined up all the jars and gave that a thorough wash so that they could come out nice and squeaky clean and dry. Once that was done, I proceeded to removing all the other items that we had in our pantry, so more your container and jars and like tuna things and stuff like that, and I placed those on a table and again categorized them according to their groups, so things like pastas and noodles together, sauces together, stuff like that. Once that was done, I went ahead and gave the benches a wipe down, a really thorough clean. And after that, we usually place plastics once every few years, just so we can keep the benches nice and clean. So this year I decided to, instead of doing a clear one, I would change it up and add this brown kind of wood textured wallpaper. And I went ahead and laid that out, which I really was happy with the way that turned out. It looked incredible. And then grabbing my labeler machine, I went ahead and labeled all the items that we had. So all the staples that we always have, I gave those a label, which I will use on later. I grabbed these containers from Kmart. I think they were about $7 each, and they were just really there to help to categorize all the items that we had. So in this container, I had all my spreads, things like honey, peanut butter, etc., and then some larger jars. So I labeled that with a spreads label. And then I had another container which I added my baking items, so things like choc chips, baking powder, things like vanilla extracts, anything related to baking. I had its own category and I labeled that as well. As you can see, they just look nice and even and everything looks nice and put together and categorized. And then I had this other white container which I got from Kmart. I think it was $4, and this is where I put my own kind of baking stuff as well, things like piping tips, all the equipment, some of my equipment. I actually have another one in my garage that has it all, but this is just a immediate source of baking equipment, things like my cupcake cases, food coloring, all that stuff. And again, I placed a label on that as well, just so it's really easy to identify. And it just looks really nice. So once the dishwasher had finished cleaning out the jars, I removed those and added all the things back into place. If you're wondering where I got the jars from, we actually have had these for so long we can't even remember where we bought them from. I'm pretty sure though you can buy them from any good home decor place, things like that, any like IKEA, places like that. I'm sure they're readily available. So I put those into the jars, and then I bought these containers from Kmart. They were $10 each, and I placed the cereal that we had into those as well. And then my favorite part of all is to label the jars, so I went ahead and gave those all a label according to obviously what was in the jar. So as you can see, the circle jars, I made sure that they were more our breakfasty kind of sweet almost ingredients, things like nuts and whatnot, oats, dates, things like that. And the smaller jars were like also on the sweet category, but you don't really need those more often, so things like icing sugar, breadcrumbs, sesame seeds, stuff like that. And I had 2 jars for dates, one was for pitted and one was for unpitted. And then I gave the cereal again a label, and then I went and put the jars back, those circular jars back into place. And as you can see here, the square jars are more for your savory items, so things like your quinoa, your pasta, red beans, cracked wheat, things like that. And yeah, it just helps to group things and make it a lot more categorized. So then I put those back into the shelf. I'm so sorry about the lighting. It was really hard to film in the pantry because it was just an awkward position, and yeah, there wasn't much light hitting that area of the kitchen. So that's what the first shelf looks like in terms of how the jars are laid out with their labels. So then moving on to my nuts/seed collection, I simply grabbed this rack which I purchased from Kmart and laid out all the jars that I had on that. I really like this shelf because it just allows you to really visualize all the back jars as well, so you're not really sifting through and wasting time. And then I went ahead and placed a label, as you can see. If you're wondering where I got the jars from, they're actually just old jam bottles, so I just collected those. And then moving on to tea and coffee, again I had a container just categorizing the more boxes that I had, and I purchased this small rectangular box from Kmart where I laid the tea bags in. So then moving on to the next category, so this one is more of your savory kind of pasta and noodles, all those packages or extra savory things, I just labeled those onto one thing. And then I had a basket also for bread, and finally a snack basket, so things like my crackers, any healthy snacks that I had. And then we also had this rack, so I organized the magazines back into place and placed the foil, baking paper, things like that on the very top rack, which you can see here. And once everything was put into place, this was the final result. So my baking savory things at the very top, as well as bread. On the second shelf I had all my labeled jars, so as you can see everything is nice and tidy and easily identifiable. So that's how the wallpaper that I laid out before looks like. I was super happy with that. It just uplifted something that was really simple. And then on the second shelf I had my nuts and seeds all labeled up. Things like my spreads or my teas were categorized on one side. And finally at the very bottom I had some extra refills that I needed, things like my snack box and the magazines, papers, pens, things like that, just to the side. And this is an overview of what it all looks like, so nice and really decluttered, and yeah, everything is in its rightful place. And we are done. I really hope you guys enjoyed watching this week's video. If you enjoy watching more of these organization styled videos, please do make sure to let me know by liking, subscribing and commenting down below. I hope you guys have an amazing week ahead, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!